Welcome back to Devil's Diary TV. Let the story begin. It was a stormy night in my quaint hometown of Willowville, a place known for its calm and peaceful ambiance. The historic houses, my own included, stood silent and vacant, comfortably nestled amidst towering trees that held stories as old as the town itself. My town, usually a timeless postcard of serenity and tranquility, was now swallowed by an unusually boisterous and tumultuous storm. The storm composed its own symphony of haunting sounds, unsettling the otherwise peaceful environment. This storm, however, was a peculiar one. It felt as if it had a life of its own. The rumble of thunder would grumble like a beast waking from a deep slumber, a haunting prelude to the sharp, shattering crack that followed in its wake. Each lightning strike would light up the rain-drenched streets, casting an ethereal glow that set the shadows dancing, creating a visual spectacle that was as fascinating as it was frightening. As the lone inhabitant in my family's grand old house, I was acutely aware of its vast emptiness. The silence was overwhelming, almost stifling, and the shadows stretching into the corners of the rooms seemed to be growing deeper and more ominous with each passing minute. Seeking solace, I cocooned myself in the comforting folds of my blanket, attempting to find comfort in the soft glow of the television against the encroaching darkness. The storm outside was more than just a weather phenomenon. It served as a mirror, reflecting the turmoil brewing in my heart. Every sharp crack of thunder would make me jump. My heart would pound against my ribcage as a wave of fear washed over me. In search of a distraction, something comforting and familiar to drown out the storm's unnerving symphony, my thoughts wandered to my favorite comfort food, pizza. Almost instinctively, I placed an order on my phone, the confirmation message acting as a reassuring beacon amidst the stormy tumult. As the storm continued to serenade my slumbering hometown, the intensity of the rain pounding against the windows and the roof of my house increased. I found myself retreating even deeper into my blanket, my eyes shifting nervously between the flickering television screen and the storm-warped darkness outside. The thought of a warm, inviting pizza provided a sense of normalcy, a temporary refuge from the stormy terror that had taken over my heart. Time seemed to slow as I awaited my order. It was as if the world outside was holding its breath in anticipation. I was expecting nothing more than a deliciously warm pizza on this wild, stormy night. This was just the beginning, though I had no inkling of what the rest of the night had in store for me. Unbeknownst to me, this storm was not only a test of my courage, but also a harbinger of changes to come. It was a night that would alter the course of my life forever. I expecting nothing more than a warm pizza on this stormy night. This was just the beginning, and I had no idea what the future held for me. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, Carl, the pizza delivery guy, was en route. Carl, an unassuming character, was just a nondescript face behind the counter at the local pizzeria. To me, he was just one of the many I've ordered from but never met in person. Little did I know that underneath that ordinary facade, he was different, dangerously so. He had been nursing a peculiar and disturbing fixation on me, weaving a plan that put me right in the heart of the coming tempest. Carl, in flesh and blood, had visited my home the past on his unremarkable delivery trips. However, in his twisted mind, these visits numbered in the countless. He had been surreptitiously observing me, meticulously putting together an unsettling picture from the fragments of my life that he had surreptitiously gleaned from our brief encounters. Seated comfortably in the worn-out driver's seat of his battered delivery van, he had initiated a terrifying game of to the casual observer. There was nothing remarkable about his exit from the bustling pizzeria. But for Carl, the situation held an entirely different meaning. The stakes were astoundingly high. The steady patter of the rain against the windshield was a fitting accompaniment to the storm of events he was preparing to unleash. Throughout the long drive, his mind persistently circled back to me. Details he had painstakingly gathered about me were not just insignificant facts. Instead, they were powerful weapons in his hands, tools for his twisted games. His menacing daydream was interrupted by the sight of my home. He swerved his van onto my driveway, a jolt of adrenaline propelling him, his heart pounding like a tribal drum echoing in the wilderness. The comforting lights of my home were in stark contrast to the icy intentions Carl harbored. The darkness of the night failed to mask the malicious intent in his eyes. The pizza box resting on the passenger seat was an innocent bystander, a cruel smirk hidden in its shadow. I, the unsuspecting recipient, was waiting for my delicious pizza, completely unaware of the hidden agenda he had for me. As he drove off, the lights of my house fading in the rearview mirror, Carl's eyes were with predatory anticipation. The stage was set, and the night was his theater. The curtain was about to rise on a grotesque performance, the plot of which was known only to him. The game was in motion, and I was the unsuspecting player, the pawn oblivious to the machinations of the king. He had cunningly maneuvered all the players on his chessboard. The game was leaning in his favor, and scent of victory was intoxicating. Carl was ready to grasp that victory no matter the cost, no matter the consequences. He was prepared to cross any line, break any rule, all for the thrill of the game. The end was in sight, and he was relentless in his pursuit of it. Driving off, Carl's eyes burned with a predatory anticipation. He had taken center stage, and the night was his theater. He was about to perform a grotesque play, the plot of which was known only to him. The game had started, and I was the unsuspecting pawn. Carl had his victory in sight, and he was ready to grasp it at any. As I turned the knob and opened the door, I was eagerly anticipating nothing more than the comforting aroma of my long-awaited pizza. However, the sight that greeted me was downright chilling. The door creaked open, unlocking a panorama of the silent evening outdoors and the silhouette of a figure standing ominously in the diminishing twilight. It was Carl, a familiar face in our neighborhood, who was known for delivering pizzas with incomparable punctuality. He stood there, looking as ordinary as ever, with his cap skewed slightly to one side and his uniform faded from continuous use, both signs of him having embraced this laborious lifestyle. In his grip was a pizza box, my dinner, and my source of momentary delight. What was ordinarily a mundane encounter had a layer of uneasiness tonight. Carl's eyes, they were different. They had an eerie, prolonged, predatory look that sent a chilling shiver down my spine. The manner in which his gaze seemed to bore into me as if he was observing me was uncanny. As he extended his hand to hand me the pizza, our fingers brushed, and an overwhelming sense of fear washed over me. His words, "Enjoy your meal," were uttered in a monotonous voice, as casual and indifferent as the cool evening breeze. His statement was harmless on the surface, a routine phrase exchanged during our interactions. But the sharp glint in his eyes narrated a different story, one that left me edgy. They had an intimidating gleam, almost predatory, hinting at a dark, hidden intent. As he departed, I watched him disappear into the night, a creeping feeling of apprehension slowly winding its way up my spine. Retreating to the sanctuary of my home, I found it impossible to dismiss the unsettling feeling that this brief encounter had left behind. Each time I blinked, I could see Carl's penetrating gaze, etched in my memory like a haunting nightmare. I tried to convince myself that it was merely paranoia playing tricks on me, but with each passing minute, my apprehension seemed to balloon, slowly consuming me. My eyes darted to the door more frequently than usual, a mix of fear and anticipation plaguing my thoughts at the prospect of seeing Carl at my doorstep again. I tried to divert my attention to my pizza, usually a source of delight, but the slice in my hand tasted bland, its flavor eclipsed by my escalating anxiety. As I tried to replay the delivery exchange and Carl's unnerving stare, a sickening feeling washed over me, and I realized Carl was more than just a delivery driver. He was a common man with an unfathomable secret, an underlying sinister agenda that was now becoming uncomfortably apparent. The harsh reality my situation began to sink in, and a wave of terror engulfed me. I found myself wandering around my living room aimlessly, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The storm raging outside seemed to be an uncanny reflection of my internal turmoil, with its thunderous roars shaking the silent night. My home, once a haven of peace, now felt tainted with terror. The walls seemed to be closing in, the familiar surroundings morphing into a prison cell of sorts. The external tumult was only feeding into my internal chaos, amplifying my fears. As I shut the door, I couldn't shake off dread that had overcome me. The eerie delivery was over, but it seemed like the real terror was just kicking off. The quietness of the night was abruptly interrupted by the dissonant buzzing of a phone. It was a text message. The sight of the sender's name, Carl, left my heart pounding in my chest. Just an hour ago, he had been nothing more than a friendly pizza delivery guy, handing over a warm box filled with cheesy delight. His smile had seemed unassuming then, nothing that would hint at the impending terror. But now, the friendly exterior had vanished, replaced by a chilling and ominous tone. His first message sent an unsettling chill down my spine. "I hope you're enjoying your pizza, Emily." My chest tightened in fear, an overwhelming realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. The uncomfortable truth was that he knew my name, my isolation, and even worse, he was watching me. It felt as if a gust of cold wind had blown across my skin, making me shudder. The phone vibrated again, delivering another message and fresh wave of terror. "Nice living room, Emily. I love the blue curtains." My fear escalated, reaching new heights. It wasn't just the terrifying knowledge was in my vicinity, aware of my surroundings. The fear continued to mount, twisting into a sickening sense of dread. It was as if I was being dragged underwater, struggling for air, without any hope of reaching the surface. The thought of Carl's unseen gaze, penetrating the safe walls of my home, shook to the core. His text messages kept pouring in, each one revealing more of his eerie knowledge about me. I felt completely exposed, vulnerable, a prey to a predator in the open water. His text messages took a more sinister turn, each one showcasing his dangerous intentions. "It's not safe to be alone, Emily. You never know who might be watching." The implications were extremely disturbing, causing my heart to race as adrenaline coursed through my veins. The harsh reality hit me like a freight train. My home, my sanctuary, had morphed into a hunting ground for a predator. A bone-chilling fear gripped me, my pulse pounding in my ears, amplified by the deafening silence of the night. I felt like a cornered animal trapped in what was once my safe haven. The looming darkness outside seemed to press against the windows, a silent spectator to my terror. Carl was out there somewhere, a specter hidden in the shadows, his texts serving as chilling reminders of the imminent danger. The storm of terror swirling inside me mirrored the ferocity of the weather outside. Amid the howling winds and relentless rain, I found myself cornered and terrified within my own home, a prey to an unseen predator. Each beat of my heart echoed through the quiet, the relentless drumming the only sound breaking the silence. I was frozen in fear, trapped within my own home, a prey to a predator I couldn't see. Amid the raging storm, I found myself cornered and terrified in my own home, a prey to an unseen predator. My heart pounded a desperate rhythm, the only sound piercing the silence. I was trapped in my own home, a prey to an unseen predator. My haven, my home, once a sanctuary, felt terrifyingly ominous. The familiarity of the walls which once embraced me with warmth, now seemed like an eerie boundary, closing in on me with every tick of the clock. It was as if an unseen entity had invaded my peaceful abode, transmuting it into a chilling theater where nightmares played out. This spectral creature, though invisible, wrapped my house in fear, transforming it into a winter's night of terror. My heartbeat echoed the rhythm of a war drum, shaking the bars of my ribcage. The metronome was the ancient grandfather clock that stood ominously in the hallway, its ticking serving as a chilling of the ticking time bomb I found myself in. My breath faltered, each inhalation a battle against fear that seemed to tighten its grip with each passing second. The once melodious sounds of my home now formed a dissonant orchestra of dread, each note gnawing at my sanity, and every eerie noise echoing within the confines of my home. Noises that seemed benign day whispered chilling threats under the cover of darkness. Carl, a seemingly ordinary pizza delivery guy, had grotesquely morphed into my tormentor. In his sick twisted, he had turned my house into his stage and me into his puppet. The lights blinked erratically, casting distorted silhouettes that danced ominously on the walls, their grotesque forms resembling specters from a horror movie. The silence was deafening, each second filled with an anticipation of the horrors that were to unfold. Abruptly, the television flickered on, the noise shattering the silence into 1,000 pieces. The channels flipped rapidly, a montage of images flashed across the screen, painting a picture of chaos. The house seemed to breathe in sync with my frantic heartbeat. The walls pulsed in an unsettling rhythm that mirrored my terror. The empty corners echoed with sounds of despair, transforming my home into a terrifying labyrinth of echoes. Every sound, from the creaking floorboards to the rustle of the wind outside, was amplified, each one sounding like a death knell. While Carl reveled in his sadistic amusement this horror show, each corner of my house became a site for his gruesome performance. I felt entrapped. The walls seemed to close in on me, rooms contorting into grotesque caricatures. My sanctuary was now tainted with an inescapable dread. The flickering lights played a spectral ballet on the walls, conjuring shadows stalked me relentlessly. Fear held me in its icy grip, my pounding heart a testament to my terror. The familiar sounds of my home now played a terrifying symphony, a chilling reminder of Carl's unseen threat lurking in the shadows. Every blink of the lights, every eerie noise heightened my fear. My haven, my sanctuary was no longer a home, but a horrifying hunting ground. Overwhelmed by desperation, I hastily grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The sound of the dial tone ricocheted against the of my home, bouncing back at me, its incessant drone echoing through the eerie silence of what used to a hive of warmth and laughter. The feeling of the cold, hard plastic against my skin was a stark reminder of the reality I was facing. My fingers, trembling like leaves in the wind, moved over the worn-out keypad, pressing each digit with a sense of urgency that I had never experienced before. Each beep of the dial tone seemed to punctuate the threat of the unknown that I was grappling with. When the call finally connected, the monotone voice on the other end was like a lighthouse in the engulfing darkness of my fear. Even though the operator's voice was calm and composed, it felt like a lifeline in my sea of fear. I clung onto the phone, the turning colder against my pale skin, my knuckles turning white as I whispered my terror-filled plea. "Please help me." My voice may have been a mere whisper, a soft sound barely discernible against the silence, but the terror within it was deafening and raw. As soon as my mind switched gears and my instincts took over, I was in survival mode. My body moved with an urgency that seemed to be fueled by pure instinct and adrenaline. It was as if time had begun to race, pushing me to act quicker, think faster. I quickly barricaded myself in my bedroom, using a bookshelf to block the door and a couch to block the back. I secured every possible point of entry with whatever I could find, transforming my once home into a makeshift fortress. This was my final stronghold against the unseen adversary. There I was, clutching a kitchen knife, its icy metal grip sending chills down my spine. It felt like a grim reminder of the danger I was facing. With every rustle of the wind, every creak that resonated from the old structure of the house, my fears multiplied. I felt my sanity slipping away, my heart against my chest like a drum, echoing my mounting dread. Huddled in the corner of the room, the surrounding walls seemed to close in, each shudder of the house amplifying my anxieties. I strained to hear any sign of the approaching rescue against the whistling wind and far-off rumble of an impending storm. Every beat of my heart seemed to echo the distant thunder, each pulse a reminder of the passing seconds. Seconds, my sanctuary had turned into a deadly labyrinth. A ticking time bomb with each passing second, my fear heightened, life I knew hanging on by a thread. I was caught in a terrifying game of life and death, each passing moment, each tick of the clock a wave of dread coursing through my veins. My survival was no longer in my hands but hinged on the timely arrival of the rescuers. My life was hanging by a thread. I was caught up in a terrifying game, my survival hinging on the timely arrival of the rescuers. The sirens pierced the quiet night, their cry a bittersweet lullaby. My heart throbbed in my chest, a pounding symphony of fear that matched the shrill crescendo of the sirens. It was a melody of terror, a symphony of panic that reverberated through the silence. I stood alone in my room, my breathing ragged and tense, the silver blade of a kitchen knife gleaming coldly in my trembling hand. The sirens grew louder, the piercing wails echoing through the night, a chilling serenade that underscored my predicament. Their relentless wail was a grim reminder of the impending danger, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that filled the house. I was caught in a web of fear, the cold touch of dread creeping up my spine. The arrival of law enforcement was a moment of both relief and heightened anxiety. Their presence was like a beacon in the darkness of my terror, a signal of hope amidst the paralyzing fear. Yet at the same time, it was a harbinger of the inevitable that loomed ahead. With each passing moment, the tension grew thicker, the air heavy with anticipation. The silence that greeted them was eerily unsettling, the calm after a storm. It was an ominous quiet, the kind that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Their footsteps echoed through the silent house, a metronomic rhythm that the tense atmosphere. The scream that shattered the silence was like a bolt of lightning, splitting the tension-filled air. It was my own voice, a desperate cry, a plea for help. The officers reacted swiftly, their movements swift and coordinated. They advanced towards the danger, their trained senses on high alert. The ensuing confrontation was nothing short of a battlefield. Carl, a monstrous intruder hidden in my closet, lunged at the officers. His were wild, his actions fueled by an obsessive fixation. The room turned into a whirlwind of chaos, filled with flying objects, grunts, and roars. But the officers fought back with unyielding determination. Their primary goal was to ensure my safety. They battled Carl's ferocity with strength and persistence. Amidst the struggle, the unmistakable sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the room, resonating with finality. The reign of terror was finally over. Carl was subdued. I stepped out of my hiding spot, my body trembling, my breath shallow. The knife slipped from my hand, its metallic clang a haunting echo in the silence. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The police officers approached me, their voices gentle and reassuring. They were the embodiment of safety, their presence a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. As they led Carl away, I felt a wave of relief washing over me. The menacing figure that had cast a dark shadow over my life was finally removed. In the wake of it all, as the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut filled the room, I realized I had been holding my breath. The realization hit me like a wave, a moment of clarity amidst the chaos. I let out a breath, a shuddering release of the fear I'd held onto. Finally, I could. The reality that came to light was more appalling than even my most terrifying nightmares. The semblance of normalcy was shattered when I discovered that Carl, the seemingly innocuous pizza delivery guy, had been observing me. It was a danger that I had never foreseen, let alone prepared for. In the quaint, unpretentious town of Meadow Grove, where everyone acquainted with everyone else, I had unknowingly become the focus of a deeply unsettling mystery. As I reclined in my comfy house under the wide, rumbling night sky, I could feel Carl's menacing presence casting a spine-chilling shadow over my humble abode. Outside, a fierce wind wailed like a tormented ghost, while the ethereal moonlight revealed an alarming truth. It was on this dark night, filled with profound fear and dread, that I dialed 911. The police arrived and made a discovery that would forever haunt me. Nestled in a gloomy corner of my wardrobe, they found a stockpile of terrifyingly personal items. There were photographs taken stealthily from a distance, detailed notes that documented my everyday routines, and even strands of my hair as part of Carl's alarming collection. He had been secretly skulking, observing, and gathering fragments of my otherwise ordinary life. The revelation of his malevolent obsession was like a devastating blow to my stomach. The pizza delivery guy, who I had always seen as an average, harmless man, was in fact a predator. Each casual conversation, every seemingly benign interaction during his pizza deliveries, were all part of his meticulously designed plan to gather information about me. His sinister actions, the disturbing messages, the unnerving mind games, they were all part of a horrifying scheme. His motive was not just to intimidate me, but to establish dominance and control over my life. Carl's terrifying scheme filled every corner of my life with overwhelming fear. The flickering lights that threw shifting shadows on my walls, the television that broadcast static noise at random intervals, the eerie sounds that echoed in my house, the heavy breathing on the other end of the phone line. All these were elements of his nightmarish plan. When the police found a knife among Carl's possessions, it was a chilling indication that his intentions had escalated beyond just stalking. Was a grim reminder of the danger I was in, and a horrifying suggestion of the potential disaster had the police not intervened in time. The unearthing of Carl's unhealthy obsession and his alarming intentions was a jarring wake-up call about the darkness that could lurk behind the most ordinary of faces. This unfolding nightmare was a dreadful reflection of the world around me, where even the most mundane interactions potential threats. My turmoil, my struggle against fear, my determination to stay alive, and my resolve to retaliate against my oppressor were all a testament to my unyielding spirit. My terrifying experience, my fight survival, was a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the most ordinary of facades. The chilling tale of the deadly pizza delivery was a horrifying narrative, but also a testament to my spirit and resilience. A young woman who refused to be following the terrifying ordeal, I could feel my body tremble. The familiar sensation of my heartbeat echoed in my ears, each beat louder than the last. My world was spinning, my thoughts were a whirlwind of raw emotions and half-processed fear. The sheer intensity of what I had experienced caused my hands to shake uncontrollably. I could sense the adrenaline pumping through my veins, fueling my body's automatic response to such trauma. My breath was shallow, barely audible even to my own ears, as the reality of my situation set in. The moment was surreal. My usually calm demeanor was now replaced by a wave of panic and bewilderment. I was alive, not just existing, but truly alive. It was a strange, dichotomous feeling. On one hand, there was the fear, the dread of what I had endured. On the other hand, there was the relief, the realization that I had survived, that I was still breathing. My tranquil and safe haven, the serene town of Willowville, was now a different world. The once peaceful, almost dreamlike atmosphere was disrupted, shattered into pieces that could never be put back together. Willowville, a place that I had always associated with peace and tranquility, had just endured a night filled with unspeakable horror. The quiet streets that once echoed with laughter and joy were now ominously silent, bearing witness to a nightmare that had become all too real. Of happiness were overshadowed by the terror of the present. The smiling faces of my neighbors were replaced by expressions of shock and confusion. The cozy homes that lined the streets, once a symbol of safety and comfort, were now a chilling reminder of the danger that lurked in the shadows. My sanctuary was not spared either. It bore the physical scars of the terror, the evidence of a nightmare turned reality. The once vibrant colors of my home now seemed dull, the cheerfulness replaced by an air of eeriness. The silence was deafening, each moment passing by amplifying the quiet. Yet amid the chaos and the horror, there was a strange sense of understanding, an acceptance of the harsh reality. This was my home, my sanctuary, my town. And though it was marred by fear and dread, I didn't want to abandon it. The terrifying ordeal had shaken me, but it had also made me realize I was alive and I was home. My sanctuary, my sweet little home, now bore the scars of a frightful encounter that shook. Tonight I've recounted my harrowing ordeal, a nightmare that commenced with something as innocent as ordering takeout. This incident unfolded in the tranquil rural expanse of Willowville, where I, a solitary young woman, found myself alone on a tempestuous night. Desiring the soothing warmth of comfort food, I decided to order a pizza from a local joint. Little was I aware that this seemingly harmless act would invite a menacing specter my serene sanctuary and shatter my tranquility. The narrative took a terrifying twist with the appearance of Carl. His exterior was deceptive, far from an accurate representation of his true nature. To an unsuspecting observer, he was just another pizza delivery guy. But hidden beneath the veneer of normality was a monster fueled by obsession and malevolence. He had been observing me secretly, gathering intimate intricacies about my existence. This information served to feed his nefarious intentions. This was not merely a delivery guy. He was a malevolent predator masquerading as a service provider. The atmosphere became heavy with dread the instant Carl alighted onto my porch. His unnerving, prolonged gaze and his predatory grin were the initial harbingers of the horror that was about to unfurl. Though I had an inkling of the impending danger, to comprehend the sheer magnitude of the peril that had infiltrated my safe haven. As the hours of the night ticked away, Carl's malevolence escalated. He would bombard me with menacing messages, each revealing a disturbingly intimate knowledge of my every move. He toyed with my fear, morphing my previously safe abode into a terrifying playground. The once comforting lights began to flicker ominously, the television would switch on and off unpredictably, and chilling noises reverberated throughout the house, transforming it into a true house of horrors. When the ordeal escalated to its horrifying climax, I, paralyzed with terror, made a frantic attempt to call the police. I managed to barricade myself within my own home, clutching a kitchen knife tightly. This basic utensil was against the lurking horror. Each minute stretched into an eternity, as holding my breath in anticipation of my impending rescue. The climax of this terrifying experience was as horrifying as it was comforting. The police finally arrived, leading to a tense showdown with Carl, who had been secreted away in my closet all this time. The unsettling reality of Carl's obsession was finally laid bare. My nightmarish ordeal concluded with the arrest of my tormentor. In the quiet town of Willowville, on a stormy night, a tale of darkness unfolded, reminding me that sometimes the monsters are not under our beds, but at our doors. For more horror stories from the Devil's Diary TV, click here to watch now. Like, comment, and subscribe before it's too late for you too.